For how long, my brothers and sisters, will you not see that fearing to let down and please those people that do not even respect your standards is preposterous? How long will you think this? And how long will it be until your mind becomes empty? There's a great quote in the Tao Te Ching, and it says, this is from verse 20 here, or, lesson 20, however you want to look at it. And it says, other people have what they need, but I alone possess nothing. I alone drift about, like someone without a home. I am like an idiot. My mind is so empty. This is the original way to view the no mind principle. And people-pleasing comes from a state of overthinking and overanalyzing to the point in which you're not even overthinking for a specific purpose. You're just overthinking to overthink because you have nothing to think about but thoughts. And I'm guilty of this. Absolutely, I've been guilty of this. And now when this happens, though, what I do is whenever somebody's trying to take advantage or trying to disrespect my own standards, I think about two different kinds of people that I would maybe say that could be archetypes when it comes to this kind of thing. So, for example, we have Vincent van Gogh and Pablo Picasso. These were tremendous artists, and yet they had very different approaches to how they approached people when it came to them disrespecting their work, and it came to disrespecting their value that they perceived. Vincent van Gogh was like, whatever. I don't really care. Whatever it is, just as long as I can get by, it's fine. And then you have Vincent van Gogh, who would charge a tremendous amount of money. Tremendous. Just to give you a sketch that looked like a kid drew it. And he would say something along the lines of, okay, that'll be, X amount of money. And if they start to refute and rebuke the offer, the challenge of how much his work is, he would say probably something along the lines of, well, it took me a lifetime to develop how to learn how to do that so effortlessly. So what you might think that takes me 5 to 10 minutes or even an hour or whatever, yeah, you're not paying me for that time. You're paying me for the craftsmanship that it took me to complete that. And you know what? I think that's really how a lot of us ought to look at the ways in which we move through the world, especially as people who perhaps have had this infantilization within our relationships that we've been trained to do. We were trained into helplessness. We were trained to fear not pleasing people. We were trained to go against our own nervous system. Because to not go against our nervous system would mean that we were not safe to express what we truly need and what we truly feel in the moment. And there's going to be certain factors that play into this, of course. But the most important thing that you can do is to recognize, well, do you want to be more like Picasso or do you want to be more like Vincent van Gogh when it comes to how people treat you? And if you can't really do either or, then do what I call a creative reconstructing or a creative sculpting of the timeline that you're in. Because when you control the narrative, properly and not by just trying to control the narrative just to control the narrative, when you control the narrative internally in your own mind, well, then you determine your own frequency, you determine your own relationship to the soul of existence. And so this takes integration of the shadow, this takes an integration of the anima and the animus. This takes a proper integration of all these different factors of being and life and prosperity. But it's not necessarily about the prosperity or the wealth or the whatever. It's about the expression of the psyche. And what I'm starting to think is that we've entered a time, an age of novelty, to the degree in which we don't even know what it would be like if we went back. We would have no idea. We'd have no idea what it would be like if we went back to what we were like before, because we have no idea what it was to be like what we were before. Not even just 7 years ago. Remember how it feels like 2019 was the last normal year? And every year since then is just compounded on itself. Because sometimes I think about this as like aging. Maybe this is just biological aging, right? This is just a side effect of that. But then I think to myself, you know what? I really don't think so. I really don't think that this time is supposed to be moving this fast. And I don't think that we're supposed to be living in such a way that we do. And yet we are. And so what do we do about that? How do we live? How do we reconfigure ourselves to be in a proper relationship to existence as a whole? How can we improve the substance of our character? How can we improve the substance of our fulfillment? Well, we have to express the psychic wholeness in a different type of way than we normally would. And this involves recognizing how to empty your mind. How do you empty your mind without becoming, basically basically insane, right? Like you don't want to be emptying your mind to the point in which your brain falls out, but at the same time, you kind of have to lose your mind in order to be sane. It was only when I was able to lose my mind, to go insane, that I found sanity. I found sanity, insanity. And I talk about that in my book, the Book of Oldishness, quite a bit. And, looking back into my own book, these are roots to my own psychic wholeness and expression. And it seems to me that I am naturally learning how, I don't even know how I'm doing this. I really don't. Nobody's figured it all out, because to figure it all out means that there's nothing to figure out. And so I've not figured out anything about this life. Life would make a whole lot of sense if it weren't for everything that's happened in this life. And that's just the truth. Because there are things that are acausal that I cannot pinpoint down exactly on why it is the way that it is and how it's happening the way that it's happening. And yet, I cannot disregard the fact that it's happening and that it is a happening. This is a energy of existence dancing with itself. This is just energy dancing with energy. This whole experience is something beyond. And yet, you're too focused on what somebody that doesn't even have anything to really give you. You're too focused on how to please them. Really? That's sometimes just the mentality that you have to have is you've got to be brutally honest with yourself, and that maybe you've lost a little bit of your edge. Maybe you've lost a little bit of your sharpness and your cognitive faculties, and that you can reclaim those things because you never really lost them. You just were revealed. Like the soul of existence showed you who these people really are. The soul of existence showed you that you were reveling in your own compassion, hoping that these people were not as bad as you truly saw they were to be. And you were hoping that these people were not as selfish. And yet, if you just emptied your mind and you accepted who they were for why they were, everything would have made a lot more sense a lot more sooner. But alas, we must learn our lessons one way or another. But the most interesting thing about this life is once we truly integrate these lessons through our shadow, our anima, or our animus, and we get closer to the self, we get closer to ourselves, the thing that transcends time, into timelessness. Once we get closer to this, all of a sudden, things seem to make a lot of sense. Things seem to make sense because in that insanity is sanity. We find sanity in sanity. And that's kind of a difficult thing to process, and it's not really easy to explain because it's not supposed to be explainable. This is one of the reasons why silence is sometimes the best teacher. Silence is the best teacher because it says things that nobody can say. It's kind of like a book, or even YouTube videos, or things online that you'll see that are actually valuable, not just like slop, AI slop, or just because there's a lot of people out there that are just, they're recycled thoughts and opinions, and they're recycled versions of themselves. And it's not to say that we don't all do this, because it's very difficult to have an original thought. But it's even more so difficult to have an original thought that can carry weight for the collective consciousness to accept. I think this is one of the reasons why the Beatles, for example, were so impactful in their time and in their age, because they were able to, number one, start off with, very naturally, this romantic pop type of music. And they were able to get a pretty wide range audience. And, it was the 60s, of course, so they had more time to experiment with psychedelic substances and such. And I'm not endorsing this per se, but I wouldn't be having the types of realizations or the perceptions that I do about life if it weren't for those experiences that I had years ago, because I haven't tripped for years, but I'm still processing some of those experiences. That's how powerful those experiences can be. I mean, you look at a plant or you look at a tree and you feel as though it's got more to say, and it's got more to be than most people. Like that's something that I name trees, right? Like there's a tree, perhaps people who have been watching my channel for a while, if you're a Regal Change old timer, you'll know that there's a tree over by where I usually walk by the mountainside during the summertime. There's a tree over there. His name's Francolano. We got Francolano over there, and Francolano's one of my best friends. He's one of my best buds. And it's so interesting because it's weird to say that, but at the same time, it's not very weird to say that, because I've also sensed, there's also a tree that I experienced. This was a few years back and a few years ago. There's a canyon about 10 minutes away from me, and you just drive, 10 minutes down the canyon road, and you're basically in the middle of the forest, right? It's one of the great things I love about living where I do. And you're there, and there's a river. And I one time climbed up on the river, or on this tree over the river. And so the river was running beneath me, and I was on the tree. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I'm putting a lot of faith in this tree to keep me up, because if I fell from the tree, I would be going through the river. And I just felt this immense trust with this tree. Because of course, it's been a tree there for a long time. It's a huge tree. So it's likely not going anywhere, and it's likely very stable. But still, it's just the act of climbing a tree. Like, this is a living thing. And I'm just, basically, rubbing my hands and feet all over it, right? Just to have a certain type of experience. And it was weird. I started to feel compassion for the tree. I had a felt feeling of compassion for the tree. And all of a sudden, I felt as if the tree was speaking back to me. And it was very peculiar. Very, very peculiar. Felt as if I was in Lord of the Rings, but in a different frame of mind of a Lord of the Rings, where the trees, the Ents were Ents. Like, they were real, man. They were real Ents. But alas, I had that experience, and I just accepted it, and I could feel it in a different way. And I would sing to the trees. I would go back there, and there was a walkway over past the river. Once you cross the bridge, there's a walkway to walk on the other side of the river. And I would go over there sometimes on the weekends during the summers years ago, and I would just sing to the trees. When I was learning how to sing, I would go out there and just sing to the trees and see what happens. And it was so crazy because the wind would usually pick up pretty good. And like, I remember I would sing Give Peace a Chance by John Lennon, because I was learning that song on the guitar. It's like, all we are saying is give peace a chance. And so I was there, and singing to these trees. And it felt as if they were enforcing this. It felt like the spirit of John Lennon even was there too. And I can't say that this is what it was actually like, but I can say for certain that that's what the felt presence of the experience that I had, right? So what I'm really making a point here is that you can just let go a little bit and experience nature and be back in tune with nature and really allow yourself to not be so focused on these people that don't give a shit about you, man. Why do you care about pleasing these people? It's only because you're in a trauma loop. And it's better to be letting go of that. Like, as soon as you recognize that that's what's going on, just let go of it. Let go of it, move on. And recognize that there are better and cooler things to experience. Life doesn't need to be filled with trying to please someone that doesn't care. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. So empty your mind. Like Bruce Lee says, be free, be formless, shapeless, like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. Be water, my friend. So with all that being said, be like water, empty your mind, and just let go. Just let go a little bit. So sign up for the Godlike Mastery offer that I have. I've got a few inquiries over the past couple days about spots opening up, and I only have 5 spots for that open each month. And since it's going to be April in just a few days, I have more spots opening up. But with the couple inquiries that I have, that's going to be likely, I'm going to have to see the applications for that and see who's who and who's what and who's where with that. Because that's a very specific program for people that have the financial resources as well as the time and the commitment to do that. And other than that, though, I have the one-on-one sessions available, and then the Regal Academy if you want to check that out as well. We just had our best, one of the best, and in my opinion, one of the best calls we've ever had earlier today. Because I'm filming this at night, the night before I'm probably going to post this video, but when I'm very pleased with the direction that we're going now with the Regal Academy. I'm very pleased with the type of energy that we have in the Academy now. And it's turning into, a community-based academy. And that's exactly what I wanted to see, right? Like that's because it's turning into a group of people rather than, just a place to talk about things. It's actually a place to contribute and to see how to learn and educate oneself appropriately and on a vast array of different subjects. It's very cool to be a part of that, and it's very cool to, because of course, I'm the organizer and the architect of it, but for me, it's more about just that experience again, right? It's about that experience, and this is where the value on the timelines that you're in are really going to be a proponent and a component of how you perceive the reality going forward. So with all that being said, I hope that this message was useful and insightful. I don't even know what I want to title this thing. I just felt like I had something to say. So, and we went somewhere that, I don't know. We people who like my type of content and the value in the work that I do, they usually are open-minded, they're industrious, and they are not usually neurotic, and they're usually not extroverted but not introverted either. But it takes a vast amount of openness to kind of connect the dots with me, because I can definitely go from one thing to the next and connect it all together. And I do try to put it all together and wrap a bow on it at the very end to see that this is all actually coherent, even though it may look like we're orbiting different topics. So for those of you that make it this far, I appreciate you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for sharing this divine timing with me and sharing your very precious time on this earth with me. So with all that being said, peace. Until next time.